Welcome, everyone. Just give Asa another minute to make sure everything's going. Okay. Are we ready to start up, Asa?
Yep, all set.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you for taking time to be here tonight. Happy New Year. Happy new calendar New Year. There's lots of ways to decide when the new year starts, but here we are in early 2026, and I appreciate you being interested in and taking time to attend this uh, little webinar on business resolutions to make and keep in 2026. Um, Tonight we are going to I use permaculture to do just about everything in life. So here are the goals for tonight's presentation. We'll get started, and I'll introduce myself in a minute and ask you to introduce yourself in the chat. We'll talk about what to prioritize, how to prioritize. We'll do an exercise together and a brief meditation. We'll also talk about some next steps and have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. So, um, I'm going to introduce myself, and if you would like to in the chat, um, tell us where you're from, name, where you're from, and if you wanted to share anything about why you're here or um, a business that you have already, please feel free. My name is Patty Love. I am a certified permaculture designer and also a certified permaculture teacher. I'm a graduate of the Earth Activist Training Program and had the joy of co-teaching once, which was amazing. I'm also a certified business coach, and I've been a business owner of a small business for 25 years. Before that, I worked in higher education. I worked in manufacturing. I worked in finance. Um, I went to school for business in college. Um, and so in addition to those permaculture design certifications, I have a degree in business. Um, as well as liberal studies. I've been teaching the regenerative business design class for, I think, since 2019 is when we launched it. And regenerative business design, you'll hear me mention that a few times tonight, but it's a class that we brought into the Earth Activist training world. Um, so that folks who wanted to start a business or tweak a business that they have going already would have the opportunity to learn some information from a permaculture perspective. I say that it's kind of like if permaculture, intro to permaculture and business 101 had a baby. That's what regenerative business design is. I'm also the coach for the Maven Makers, which is a group that supports business owners in an ongoing way, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. When I'm home, I live in the Haudenosaunee homeland, specifically the Onondaga, where the Onondaga people have lived from time immemorial. Um, the land of the two-row wampum and the Pickering Treaty. I am traveling right now, and about an hour and a half ago, I landed in a place that is now, and I'm sorry, my where I live at home is now called Rochester, New York, and where I am now is now called Quartzsite, Arizona, and I didn't have a lot of time to research the indigenous peoples whose land I'm on, except that I can tell you that the Yavapai Apache, the Kichin, and the Kokopah are the people who have lived in this area. Uh, so I hope to learn more about that while I'm here over the next week and learn about history from of those folks and their present um, engagement in the area. And the projects that are going on. Um, so that's a little bit about me. And I see we have people from around the world on here tonight, so that's exciting to me. Um, so our goal for tonight is to talk about regenerative business. And by that, I mean a business with a foundation of making things better in some way. So, one of the topics that we talk about in RBD, which is shorthand for regenerative business design, is the multitude of ways that businesses can be regenerative. In addition to the basics like pricing and finances and marketing, we also talk about all the layers of regeneration that we can bring into a business. It can be, what we're doing, how we're doing it, who we're doing business with, uh, all kinds of things that I don't have time to go into specifically tonight. But the goal of that class is to end up with a business plan, an awesome business plan, for your regenerative business. So the theme for tonight is about prioritizing and which resolutions related to your business for 2026 that I think are important for you to prioritize. Because if you have a small business, you know that there's kind of an endless to-do list, and it can be overwhelming. Not always, but it can be really overwhelming. Um, so prioritizing is really necessary because one reason why that's necessary is time is a limited resource. Time is something that we cannot make more of, except possibly by delegating tasks. But really, we can't make more time. So that's a primary reason why we need to manage it wisely. Lots of our other resources, we can create more, generate more, but time is a limited resource. So that's the primary reason I'm positing for tonight about why we need to prioritize uh, certain tasks for a business in 2026 in order to have the outcome that we want to have. So, talking about what to prioritize, we know why because there's limited time. What do we prioritize? As I said, there's an endless list, and your list might be different on different days. But here are some things that I think are really important to consider when you're evaluating what your priorities are in the areas of finances and income production. Um, it's really important to focus on finances and income production, to be keenly aware of your financial status in your business. With a new business, you might want to review your finances every day or at least once a week. As your business matures, then you can move to maybe once a month. Definitely always keeping an eye on things at least once a quarter. In addition to like a year, uh, looking at a year at a time and comparing um, last year to this year to next year. So this is really important because if you're not generating enough income to cover expenses, then you don't really have a business that can last for beyond what your savings are or other investments. That can be a complicated conversation, but I think you get the gist. We have to make money to stay in business, and that's true even for a not-for-profit. Um, so I also think that in terms of what to prioritize for 2026 is that there has been a lot of, I'll say, economic upheaval that's been happening of late, in many places in the world, especially where I live in the place now called the United States for lots of reasons. So I think that with this sort of volatility that's been happening, um, somewhat in our country, tariffs are impacting things. Um, So it's really important to pay attention to what is called cost of goods sold, and your pricing regularly. So cost of goods sold is if you imagine you have a t-shirt business that you print designs on and you sell them, how much do the t-shirts cost you? How much does the ink cost you? What do you spend on uh, the other parts of producing that end product? That's what cost of goods sold is, because you need to be able to adjust your pricing so that, again, you're profitable or at least break even. So finances and income production are important to prioritize, not necessarily in this order that we're talking about here. We'll talk about that next. Another key area of your business that I think is super important and often overlooked is people care. This is one of our ethics in permaculture, right? People care. In a business, that means focusing on the customer service that your customers are receiving and also your team. Even if you are working independently, you may have a team of collaborators, say. You may have an accountant that you work with. You may have a bookkeeper. You may have a person at the postal service who you work with. People who you're not necessarily paying as employees, but are part of the network of humans that really make your business work. So I think that people care is a really important part of your business to focus on. Um, Customer service is super important. And if you take my RBD class, you'll hear me say under promise and over deliver. Under promise and over deliver. So that means to set the expectations at a level that you can easily meet and then do a little bit more. If you've ever ordered anything off of Etsy and you get that little surprise in the package, that's an example of what I mean. So taking really good care of our customers in a way where they will think kindly of our business, want to do business with us in an ongoing way, and also will tell their friends and family and other people they know about our business. So people care is an important resolution to make and keep in 2026 for your business. Marketing is also super important. Um, Having an inventory of product, making all those beautiful t-shirts doesn't translate into an income unless you actually sell them. So prioritizing marketing is really important. And a lot of folks tend to not do enough marketing for their business. I have been guilty of that in the past myself. A couple of decades ago, I had started a free magazine and um, turned out to be a little overwhelming. I didn't focus enough on ad sales and I wasn't able to keep it going. So it was a great magazine, got a lot of great feedback, but it wasn't generating enough income because I didn't set things up so that I had enough time to focus on, in that case, ad revenue generation. So marketing is really important to focus on um, for your business for 2026. And that can look a lot of different ways. And even if you're not the person who's going to do it, um, then you want to have somebody who is helping you with that. The next thing that's on this list of what to prioritize in 2026 to have your regenerative business thrive is to focus on the community building. When I say community building, I'm talking about not only your customers or clients, not only any folks who help make your business possible in some way, employees or the mail carrier, but also Maybe you have a group that you meet with periodically. So a network of other business owners um, that you can turn to for ideas, for feedback. Uh, so, for example, there might be in your area a group like something like SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Entrepreneurs. I think that's sorry, that flew out of my head. But that's a group that you can go to get feedback about your business. Or sometimes there will be something like a business. There used to be an organization called BNI, Business Network International, and they would get together for breakfast like once a month and talk about business networking ideas. One of the things that we do in Earth Activist is the group that I mentioned earlier, Maven Makers, where we do group coaching. So we meet together as a group once a month for 90 minutes. We keep the group small, 6 people, so that everybody has time to share and get some feedback. And then in addition to that group meeting, we also meet one-with-one, where people can ask more detailed questions, or if they have something that, that they didn't want to share with the group. You could also create your own local business owners collective or for outreach. Sometimes there's like a chamber of commerce, lots of different options for creating community, but that community is helpful not only for the practical advice and connections that you'll get, maybe some more sales, but also because when we have a network and we operate within that network, we also get some really great brain chemistry happening. Simon Sinek calls serotonin the leadership chemical. So our bodies release serotonin when we receive public recognition, when we have positive feelings of pride or status. Uh, Serotonin also explains why we love to thank people who have helped us, or we will work to make other people proud. So besides all of the like kind of external benefits from networking, there's also this internal brain chemistry that happens where you'll feel better doing your job, running your business. And that's really important. That's also part of people care, is how you are experiencing this job of running your business. Um, And depending on your personality, just a little tip here, is that sometimes if you're someone who really likes to reward yourself first and then work, so ask yourself that question. Are you someone who likes the reward and then the work, or do you like to work and then get the reward? And if you use that as you're setting your priorities, that will help you make a list of priorities that's in alignment with who you are as a person, because I think that is one important aspect about setting personalities. I will talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Um, and so that gets us into the self-care part, uh, which I think I kind of wandered into. But in addition to what I've already said, self-care as a priority for running your business is important. If you're the key person in your business, it doesn't happen if you're not well and energized and available to do the work. So it's really important for you to take care of yourself. And I think that another part of self-care is to also make time management a priority. I personally have a tendency to make a list that is too long to accomplish in a day. But what makes that work is that I make the list according to what's important, priorities, and I start with the priorities. And so then if I get to the end of the list that day, that's great. But a lot of times there's going to be something unexpected that happens, and I'm not going to get to the end of my list. I'm also an optimist. So that's why prioritizing is really important. If I save the most important thing until last and then I don't get to it, then I might have a problem. So, um, that's why time management is really important. And it also feels good when we check something off of a list. When we have a list and we check something off of the list, that also releases um, some hormones in the brain that feel good to us. So even if you're making a list of things that you've already done and you check those off, you'll still get a little bit of a brain rush there. Um, so there's a little overlap in those priorities, but as I've been talking about them. But what you want to prioritize for your business are finances and income production, marketing, also the people care of your customers and your team, however that team looks. Um, People care also is related to the community building, which leads to self-care and time management. So those are the things that I think are really important. If you're looking for a list of what to prioritize, um, I encourage you to look in that area in these areas of these 6 things as you consider what to prioritize. Now, this, as I said, it's not going to always be in this order, and we're going to get to the how part. So I've learned from my friend and sometimes collaborator, Nancy Roberts, who's also known as the Disc Wizard, that there are personality assessments, and we do use one in regenerative business design that talk about like how we do things and why we do things. The how tells us if we do things in a way that's really steady, if we're really dominant, if we're a compliance-based person. But the why we do things are the values. So, and values can often outweigh our the how we do things. Values are really important in driving your priorities, and this will happen consciously or unconsciously. And if you think about that, think about your how you start your day and how you end your day. So when you get up in the morning, what you do consciously or unconsciously says what your priorities are. So, for example, if you get up, put on some clothes, and get out the door and go for a walk or run, then exercise is one of your values. If you get up and brush your teeth, then, dental care is one of your values. If you want to read something, uh, either for pleasure or to learn something before you exercise, then learning is a higher value than exercise. Um, so values are ideas, beliefs, and behaviors that are foundational to who you are and what you think is important, what feels important for you. For me, integrity is both something that is important to me personally and for my work and how I am in my business. So if we're talking about your business, that's your sandbox. You get to set your values as the foundation for how you're going to build that business. and how you're going to build the community around the business. If you're building a business with other folks, and it's important to understand what their values are. And you might be surprised if you're working with a team to create a business, you might be surprised to find out where you have some differences. Um, a lot of times in the Earth activist community, a shared value that people have is wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to walk gently on the earth, wanting
Mm.
to have wanting everyone to have enough. So I'm not speaking for anyone, but those are some values that I find draw people to the activist training. So our values are, what we each hold sacred or what is dear, what we would protect if we needed to. It's also what we prioritize. Um, so, personal values, I talked a little bit about integrity, peace, kindness, community. In our business, um, again, a value that we want to bring into our business might be integrity, but also profit without profiteering. Um, that sense that a rising tide lifts all boats. So while our business is uh, earning money and creating something of value, um, can we also, give back to the community? So I think an important resolution, and we're going to do an exercise related to this in a few minutes, is also to understand what your values are. Let's try to make them conscious. And if you need clues to understand them, watch yourself and what you do throughout the day, and you'll have a sense of what your values are. And as I said, if you do take the regenerative business design course, we do um, an online assessment that will give you some feedback that you might find helpful in terms of values. So, how can we identify our values? Um, One way is to find a framework that appeals to us. I think that understanding our values is an important key about self-knowledge and just in general, but also in our business, because there's a saying of how you do anything is how you do everything. So who we are as an individual, a citizen of the planet, um, is going to impact who we are in our business. So really understanding ourselves is important, I think. So if you can find a framework to think about what your values are. So for example, you might use the three ethics of earth care. I'm sorry, the three ethics of permaculture: earth care, people care, fair share, future care, resource share. That third one gets explained in different ways. There's also something a friend of mine uses when I ask her how she is. She goes through what she calls pies, which is physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. What are our values in each of those areas? We can also identify our values by just taking some time to think, journal, write, make a mind map. And if you don't know what that is, there's some really great examples if you search that online. Uh, if you're an external processor, talk with beloved and trusted people to help you identify your values. Um, you can talk to yourself and record it if you don't have somebody who will listen, make up a song. And then Starhawk also teaches how to create a values council in her book, The Empowerment Manual, and also in social permaculture classes. They teach how to uh, create this values council to identify what the agreed upon values are and to make them visible to everyone. So these are some ways that we can identify what our values are. Maybe you already know, um, but here are some other ideas. And just something to consider is that our personal values may or may not have a place in our business. Um, and that's again for you to decide. That's, your business is your sandbox. So, um, w- I would just say, like, for myself, um, I don't tend to talk about my spiritual value, my value around spirituality for my business. It's an important part of who I am. And unless someone, um, and it's kind of uh, like people would see that in my actions, my commitment to my spirituality. Uh, but I don't bring it into my business. Uh, it might be really off-putting to some people. Um, so, but maybe there would be a place, if I were doing wellness workshops, I probably would talk a lot more about my spirituality. So that's just an example of a value that might belong in your personal life, but maybe you're not highlighting in your business. I hope that that makes sense. Um, okay, so we've talked about why we need to prioritize, what to prioritize, and our values, discovering our values, because our values are going to drive us as we do this work of prioritizing. And you may find that your values really support you prioritizing um, your tasks for your business. You may also find that sometimes your values put you at odds with what is best for the business. Um, and it's one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's easier for you if your values make running your business easier and prioritizing easier. But even if your values make it difficult for you to run your business, if you're conscious about that, then that will help you stay focused on the resolutions that you make, the commitments that you make. So there's no judgment about that. Again, it's just all about awareness and then finding ways to work around it. Permaculture design, right? Like we know who we are, and then we design systems to support ourselves, including our business. So I wanted to give you a tool, and we're going to do this as an exercise in a minute. This is one tool for how to prioritize. We've talked about the areas to prioritize, um, finances, marketing, that list that I gave you earlier. And then this is kind of an interesting tool, I think, for how to prioritize. So this is simply drawing a four square grid on a piece of paper, on your screen, um, in your head, however it is that you want to do this, if you have a whiteboard, any of those things. And just to understand right now, the top left is the urgent and important tasks. So the tasks that go in this quadrant are the things that need to be done immediately. They're crises or they're deadlines or issues that can't wait. So, for example, if you have a t-shirt printing business and you have an order, getting that order out to the customer is probably going to be in your urgent and important list, the list of what you're going to do. Then there's also the list of things that are important but not urgent. Those are things you can schedule for later. They will drive your long-term success. So like strategic planning. If you have an t-shirt order to get out, you don't necessarily need to stop today and do strategic planning, but you want to put that in your calendar so that you know that it's going to happen and so that it does get done. Professional development is another one of those things that's likely to be important, but isn't necessarily urgent. unless there's a deadline for signing up for something. Um, Again, this might also be where the networking goes. It might not be important unless today is the day that you're meeting. It may not be urgent and important unless today is the day that you're meeting. It's probably just belongs in this quadrant for what you're going to put in your schedule. The third quadrant that we're talking about here on the lower left are the things that are urgent, but they're not important. So these are things that maybe someone else can handle if you have someone else to help you handle that. These are things to delegate whenever possible. So things that someone else can handle, like answering routine emails or scheduling meetings or handling customer uh, requests, maybe answering the phone. So these are things that are urgent but not important, and hopefully you can delegate them either to an employee or if you work with another contractor, someone who does administrative work for you or is a business manager. That's a way that you can delegate those tasks. And then finally, we have this list of things that are not urgent and they're not important, and they're probably just a distraction. And those are things that we're going to delete from our priority list. So what are some examples here? Um, they're tasks that might be on our list that are disguised as work, but they're actually distraction. Um, so it might be something like scrolling through social media or over organizing our file, um, doing something that doesn't need me to do it and doesn't need me to do it right then. So, I will just say I have found times where I've really thought I needed to clean my desk more than to take care of a task that I wasn't really looking forward to, but was more important. So, this is one simple tool you can use for how to prioritize the important things that need to get done in your business, the things that you have, the resolutions that you've made for your business. So, and then once we get things into those four quadrants, then we can number them. So we have, we know what our number one, number two, number three priorities are. And a reason for you can actually give them numbers or you can just write them in in the order of importance. The reason for that is something that I mentioned earlier, which is then if you have an interruption that's unexpected that comes along and you've attended to the most important priority, you're in a much better place than if you hadn't. Uh, if you did put this list on a piece of paper and you had someone who works with you on the team, you could even tear off that delegate section and hand it to someone. So we're going to prioritize by figuring out what we need to do today, what we need to schedule, what we're going to delegate if we have someone to do that with, and then things that we're just going to delete. And we put it in priority order. So we're going to take a few minutes to do this exercise. And again, we try to keep the presentations kind of short, but if you can just maybe take a moment to think about your business, either that you own or you want to start, and these categories of tasks that we talked about earlier that I've listed here on the slide, the finances and income production, people care, customer service and team, marketing, also community building, self-care, and time management. And think about specific tasks in each of those categories and think about where they would belong on this grid. And if you want to do this on your phone or a piece of paper, and just see if you can get a few few things going. And I won't say anything important for the next minute or so while you work on that. But I am going to um, ask you if you right away have something that is not urgent and not important, but it's been on your to-do list for your business. And it's something that you're realizing that you just need to cross off and not worry about because maybe it's more of a distraction or it's not urgent or important. If you want to put that in the chat, you could do that. And also, as you're thinking about your business and tasks that you need to prioritize, resolutions you're going to keep for your business in 2026, if you want to share something that goes in this upper left-hand quadrant for you, and want to put that in the chat. It might be interesting for other people to see what you think is really important for your business, for you to do, the resolution you're going to keep in 2026. And if you're shy about sharing, that's okay. And we will, in just a few minutes, have the opportunity, if you have questions about the exercise, we'll be able to talk about that too. Let's see, just looking at the chat. Oh, thank you. So Sophia is starting fresh and will be offering your services. That's a priority for you. And Schiffer says client-facing work is number one on their list. Great. So hopefully that's helpful to you in terms of prioritizing. I identify as a highly sensitive person, so I just have this big spreadsheet in my head all the time about what I need to do. And I have found that this physical representation, this physical model has been really helpful for me to kind of untangle some of the thoughts in my head to prioritize. And then let's talk for a minute about, so what? So you've identified these areas where you're going to make, if you haven't already, maybe you haven't yet. Lots of folks are just kind of going back to work today for the first time this year, but either resolutions that you've made or you're going to make that probably some of them fall into these 6 categories that I listed here. And then you go through and you do the exercise to figure out what is urgent and important, and you're going to get done as soon as you are next working. The things you're going to schedule, the things you're going to delegate, and the things you're just going to delete. Then what? Well, my recommendation is something that I call time blocking. Time blocking is a way of assigning a dedicated space in your schedule for every key task instead of just leaving your day to chance. It's a way to plan your week. And there are a lot of different tools you can use, apps, all kinds of things. I'm a big fan just of, I either do this on a actual piece of paper or in my Outlook calendar, or sometimes I'll make notes on my phone and then put it into my calendar later. But I'm a big fan of blocking off time for everything I need to do. I even have like exercise in my schedule. I have meal times in my schedule. because that gives me a realistic picture of what my day looks like. Any personal appointments I have go into my schedule because if I find myself planning to do two different things at the same time, that helps my brain say, okay, Patty, get real with yourself. Which one are you going to do? And what is the priority? So rather you use something just like this grid of the days and the times, you can uh, do things to help you prioritize, like making a daily activity list for repetitive tasks. If you are uh, running a store, you need to go in and unlock the door and turn the open sign and turn the lights on. That's an example of what I mean by daily list of repetitive tasks. It might be emails. I will tell you, though, that generally speaking, I don't think that it serves me well to start my workday reading my emails unless they're work emails. Um, and unless that's how I understand like what a client wants or needs from me, because sometimes emails can be a distraction. So have that check in with yourself to see where emails make sense. I have a few collaborators where they go into their office and get started with work and they don't check emails until late morning. Um, so just give some thought to that for yourself. So we can use a tool like a calendar um, to make this daily list of things that are repetitive. We want to be really specific about what needs to be done. So in other words, I wouldn't put finances in there. I would put something like uh, get paperwork ready for the bookkeeper or make appointment with the accountant. Um, and then block the time, like I said, so that you have dedicated a realistic amount of time for getting a task done. And the good news is that if you're wrong and you get things done sooner than you think, you'll have time you weren't planning to have. That's always a good position to be in. Um, if you're a morning person, or if you tend to avoid things that are unpleasant, um, I recommend starting each day with the hardest and least pleasant tasks that you have to do. I try to do that myself for a couple of reasons. One is I am more of a morning person. I have a lot of energy in the morning, and also because I don't like to be thinking about that unpleasant thing I have to do all day long. If I just get it done first thing, then I can check it off my list and I have that great feeling of, shoo, that thing I wasn't looking forward to is done. So I recommend starting with the hardest thing, assuming that it's something that's important. Delegate where you can. And here's another tip that I think is really important for small business owners is to understand the value of your time. There's something that it's a little bit more of an advanced topic, so I won't go into it in depth, but there's something called opportunity cost, which basically means if I'm doing A, then I can't do B. So that is really important to know because, uh, again, like there's only so much time in a day. So if I go to the network meeting instead of shipping out that order that I have, um, both of those things might be important. But shipping that t-shirt is going to, give me that income that I need. Um, and also if I have to decide, am I going to that networking meeting or am I going to ship out all my orders? Um, One way to make that decision is to know like what that meeting time would cost. And maybe the networking meeting isn't such a good example, but say lunch, a long lunch with a friend. If I know that taking a long lunch uh, is going to, because of opportunity cost, keep me from earning $500 during that hour, or say it's a 2 hour lunch, uh, then with that value on my time, that helps me make that decision. So if I know that me working on direct tasks related to my business that keep orders going out the door, whatever form of client fulfillment that is, and I understand what the value is, like how much I can earn in an hour, that will help me make decisions. So for those of us who offer our time for services, we can either be doing a consultation or having lunch with a friend. So having lunch with a friend might, mean that I'm not making a few $100s. So I think that having that, knowing what the value of your work time is will help you make decisions. So that's a little bit more about how um, to prioritize. And with just a reminder to be really specific, avoid a vague goal like work on the budget and instead write down something like decide on pricing plan, uh, calculate cost of goods sold. Those would be specific tasks. So I thought we could take a minute. It's not an Earth activist event without a meditation, right? So I thought we could take just a couple of minutes to bring some clarity to ourselves. We talked about what to prioritize. We talked about values. We talked about how to identify our values and how to prioritize with this little quadratic tool. And then we have a plan for how to take all of that and put it into action steps. So we'll just take a moment to do a little introspection. So just finding a comfortable position for the body. And for me, I like to remember to put my ears over my shoulders and my shoulders over my hips. And I like to feel my feet on the floor. And because our time is short, just feeling ourselves breathing, not changing our breathing in any way, just noticing what's happening. Feeling the sense of the breath going in and the breath going out. And then imagining yourself sitting in the place where you work, sitting, standing, however it is that you work, at your desk or whatever your place of work is. And as you imagine yourself beginning your workday, imagine doing the first thing that's on your priority list. Imagine it happening. See yourself doing that most important thing. Noticing how it feels. How does it feel in your body as you do that task? And imagining that the task is completed. How does that feel in your body mind? you've completed that most important task. How does that feel to you? And then kind of fast forwarding to the end of your workday and reflecting on what you've accomplished during that day. And noticing how the body, the mind feels at the end of the day, knowing that you completed at least that first most important task. And hopefully there's a sense of something like contentment, satisfaction. Well begun is half done. Something that feels positive for you. And if not, I would encourage you to bring yourself to this space again to explore what it would take for you to have positive feelings at the end of your day of work. So once again, bringing awareness back to the body and to the breath. And if you have closed your eyes, opening them and returning to this time in this place. And if you need to make a note to yourself for anything that came up for you during our very short meditation, please go ahead and do that. And we'll get to any questions that you have in just a minute. I just want to take a couple of seconds to tell you that if you have questions, curiosity about some of these things that we've talked about, if you need some support for getting your business started, we do have the Regenerative Business Design course coming up the first Tuesday. It starts the first Tuesday in February. We'll have 8 weeks of live sessions for learning and support for your certification, especially if you're in the Regenerative Land Management Program, where the certificate is required. There are also pre-recorded lessons. We'll do that TTI disc and values assessment that I mentioned earlier. And if you complete the exercises well, then at the end of the course, you would have that certificate, have a certificate, and you'll also have a completed business plan. So that's one thing I want to tell you about as a possible next step. And another opportunity for support for starting your business or reinventing your business is to consider joining the Maven Makers group. As I mentioned, we meet as a group for 90 minutes once a month, and then everyone gets a 1 hour one-with-one meeting with me for focused support. And it's been really great to see how friendships have actually been made as a result of this opportunity for networking. And the people who tend to be drawn to this group are people who are interested in that triple bottom line, who we value the planet, people, and profit equally. And that's $157 a month. And there's no long-term time commitment to that. So with business resolutions to make and keep in 2026, we talked about what to prioritize. We have some tools for how to prioritize. You have the information that you gathered from your exercise and the meditation. We talked about some next steps. And so we have some time for some questions. I'm going to look in the chat, and Isa, will also be helping me with that. So Asa did put the links for registering for the either RBD or Maven makers in the chat, and you're welcome to reach out to either of us. What questions? Does anyone have a question that's alive for them? Go ahead, Sophia.
You know, I do time blocking. I never had that name to it, but I feel very handicapped in that realm. It's like I had to put each hour down, and write in the meals and etc. And the transition time, I have to write my driving time because otherwise I just don't even believe it's going to happen. But so I'm just curious about how to feel better about it, or what are strategies or, stuff like that. Because it's nerve wracking for me to have to think of my day. I mean, if we were to talk about values and preferences, I'm very creative. And so I love to just dive into a project and do it for 3 days straight. you know but of course that's not productive for a business. I have to put in my routines and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of fishing for experience and what are other ideas for to make that feel better.
Yeah, so it sounds like it feels a little restrictive to you to put everything in for time blocking. Yeah. One thing that comes to mind regarding your question is to also put in a time block for unplanned things. So have a spontaneity block. Um, and here's another secret or tip. Um, is you can move things around even when I time block. Like what the great part about time blocking for me is that I know that there is a space for everything that I need to do that day in that day. And if I decide that it's going to rain after work, like after dinner, but it's beautiful in the morning and I really plan to get in an hour-long walk that day, I'll just shift when I start my day. I'll walk first and then I'll get to work afterwards. And so I'll just take that block from the bottom, towards the end of the day and put it up first thing in the morning. So those two things might be helpful. Having blocks where you decide what to do. I call mine silly Sundays, like one Sunday a month. I try not to schedule anything. Um, so yeah, so having time for spontaneity and also uh, giving yourself permission to rearrange your time blocks. Is that helpful? Does that feel better to think about it that way?
That is helpful. So, for example, this week I have scheduled people connections and urgent things like offering services Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but I didn't have anything necessarily scheduled for Thursday or Friday. They're pretty open. So I can leave those open then, huh? I can hold those open for whatever comes up that's important on those days.
Yes. Yeah. And also you described yourself, so this is where like the Maven Makers part comes in. You described yourself as like artistic or creative. And so another thing that I think might be really great for you is to make this time block tool beautiful in some way. Like my calendar, I use color, and like one color is play, one color is exercise, one color is work. So whether it's a whiteboard, a a corkboard, a chalkboard, your calendar on your computer. Make it beautiful. And maybe you can do the actual time blocking in a way that's beautiful, like with colored pencils or something. So those are my thoughts. Great. Other questions? Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask if you have a question. So Allie says that oh, I'm sorry, I don't have pronouns. Allie says that they struggle with time blocks too and use a task list. that Ellie chooses from during work time blocks. Yeah, that's a great tool too. If it feels restrictive to do time blocks and be really specific, then yeah, having that priority list and just having, like, say, you're going to work from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then you just work on that list. That works too and can feel less restrictive because sometimes when I think when we feel like we're being too strict with ourselves in some way, another part can get activated that really like kind of pushes back and resists, is resistant. So, yeah. So Shifra is asking if we don't have anyone to delegate to, does that quadrant list just get added to the do list? I would say yes. If there's no one else to delegate it to, those are still things that are urgent and need to get done. Then yes, then they would go on your do list. Great question. Other questions? Again, feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself, whatever you prefer. Okay. Well, that's what I had planned to talk about tonight. I hope that it was helpful to you in some way as you think about it. There is such a culture, at least, in the place called the United States, that, we start over when the calendar year flips. And even if for those of us who follow astrology and things, there are a lot of things in the planets right now that are oriented towards fresh starts and new starts and being productive and getting those priorities set. So hopefully, the lists that I gave you and the tools I gave you are helpful to you in some way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to Asa. And Asa, do you happen to have my Earth Activist training email handy? You can put in the chat. You can also just contact me, info@pattylove.org, and that will get to me as well. So I wish you all a productive, prosperous new year and a great year for your business, because the more resources you generate for yourself, the more you can do, you can be the change you want to see in the world. The more money that comes into your life, the more you can pass that on to things that feel good to you. And oh, I see one more question. Will the slides be shared along with the recording by any chance? They will be in the recording. If you send an email to myself or to Asa, then I would be very glad to send you a PDF of the slides. So just send me an email or send one to Asa, and we'll get those slides to you in a PDF form. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you have a fantastic and prosperous year. Take care.